Дамы и господа, мы находимся с вами в «Зелёной гостиной». Наш гость сегодня — премьер Большого театра, американец Дэвид Холберг.
Pleasure, of course, always.
Join me. David, how you took this decision to come over to Russia? I think this is the question we are all keen to find out the answer.
Well, you go straight to the jugular, as we say in English.
Right. I don't have time to spend.
No, I mean, it was obviously an offer that I couldn't say no to, I think. I, of course, have to say first that it was completely the idea of Sergei Filin and Mr. Iksanov. They invited me personally, Sergei invited me personally, and, you know, it was certainly a big move for me. I changed my life a lot, my social life, my language, my just environment. I felt very comfortable in New York, and Moscow was this sort of strange city to me. But this dancing career is very short. It happens in the blink of an eye. And this is one of the most important opera houses and ballet companies in the world. And so I felt like it was an experience that I couldn't say no to. I had to experience it. I had to sort of get the feeling of the texture of the theater and of the dancers and of the repertoire and of the stage and of the audiences.
I think you're quite a daring person, because when one reads your career, you often do steps which are not easy, like moving from your hometown to New York, then to study in Paris. How does it feel every time when you come to some different environment? And what does it give you, things like that?
I feel I'm alive. I feel like I'm living life. Life to me is not sort of everyday routine. When I reach this sort of everyday routine, I start to get very existential, in a sense, because I feel bored. I feel like I need to stir things up, stir the pot, see what else is in this sort of pot that I have. And taking a risk, you know, I think once you finally take this sort of risk, or this step, you realize it's not as scary as you imagined. And you can do nothing but learn from it. And I think being scared invigorates me. It interests me.
You had quite a diversity background. I understood you started with jazz or steps, and then you moved to the classical ballet. How does that happen?
I would say calling.
Yeah.
Yes, I started with tap and jazz, very American. And classical ballet, over the years, started to call me more, really whisper something in my ear, you know, pulling me, I don't know, closer and closer. And it was finally, when I was about 13 or 14, I really took the plunge, and I just absolutely fell in love with the art form. The rigor, the discipline, the exactness of it, the effort, all of the above. I was very attracted to it.
And then when you moved to France, did it give something to you?
Of course, it put me in an environment that I knew nothing about. It made me realize a world outside of my small town in America. Not such a small town, but small town mentality. I was very American in a sense that I hadn't traveled abroad. I hadn't experienced sort of foreigners, non-Americans. So when I arrived, I was very American in that sense. I was naive and like a little puppy. And I got a very quick lesson and education in sort of reserve.
But very often people ask ballet dancers, what does it mean, American ballet school, French ballet school, Russian ballet school? You have a chance to be yourself here, there, and now in Bolshoi. Do you really feel some technical particularity which each of this environment or each of this school give to the artist?
I do. I don't feel like it defines a dancer. I don't feel like it defines me as a dancer. The fact that I was trained in America and then trained in Paris Opera and then now I'm being coached by Bolshoi coaches. But I feel like stylistically, in terms of the huge houses throughout the world, there are differences. I feel like for me, I've experienced, the Paris Opera style, trained for a year in the Paris Opera style, which is very clean and quick and exact. And now I'm dancing with Bolshoi, which certainly has its own style. I certainly can't be someone that I'm not. I can't all of a sudden announce that I am a Bolshoi dancer because I don't have this sort of training and history at the school. But I can also try and learn from the experience and keep my eyes very open to the dancers here, to the coaches, to my coach, Sasha Vetrov.
Of course, your repertoire is quite wide. You're doing quite a number of different things. But here, what you're performing those days in the Bolshoi is Onegin, which is a very important part for us. We know from childhood, of course, it's the main hero of our literature. And you does it amazingly good. But could you tell us maybe in a few words how was your attempt to make this role, how it started, how you worked on it, how you posed, because it's not only technique, it's the character as well. So how are you working once you have a real sort of role, not just the technical thing to dance, but the character on stage?
Yeah, well, definitely the technicalities you approach first, I feel. You get into the studio and you learn the steps. Then, for me, I feel like with iconic roles like Onegin, like Romeo, for the women, Odette, Odile, something like this, Giselle, your interpretation of the role has to come from this natural standpoint. It has to come from your natural sort of inclination of a role. And I'm not professing that I know Onegin in Russian literature. I'm not professing that I am Onegin of Russian literature, because everyone has their idea. I don't know what the experience was like reading Onegin as a young kid in Russia. But I do know I feel like I know the emotions of Onegin, or my portrayal of the emotions of Onegin. And hopefully that makes sense to audiences, because I try and put myself as an actor and as a dancer in that sort of environment. And I think, okay, how would I feel in a situation like this? How would I feel rejecting Tatiana? How would I feel begging for Tatiana's forgiveness and love? These types of situations that are so human.
But did you have some actress training as well, or are you working yourself?
No, working myself completely. But I feel like as an artist, for me, what works for me is just keeping my eyes wide open, really studying other people, studying other types of art, finding inspiration anywhere, and you can always bring that back to your own sort of work.
Well, once you do come on stage, surely you're conscious of what you're doing, definitely, but how much can you be in your part, depending on the music and on the partner? How much do you feel the role on stage? I don't know how to explain it better. How much you're transforming, really?
Completely, really. You are always yourself, I feel. The great actors and great artists, great dancers are always themselves. But I feel like when you go on stage in a role, especially in a role that you feel like you can connect with, it's this sort of transformation. You become the character. And at times, with Onegin, I felt like I was scared of this, because I felt very close to the portrayal of Onegin, but very afraid that I was this person, because I was like, wow, this feels very I feel like I'm portraying something successful or whatever, but then after I think, does that mean that I am sort of Onyegin's character? I got very existential in a sense that I thought that my personality was Onyegin's personality, or vice versa.
The girl who danced, Olga, Daria Khakhlova, she said to me, I saw the run through, she said to me how it was wonderful to work with you, because she said David reacts as if it all happens for the first time.
Oh, that's great. It's
how
a huge
you do
compliment.
it, indeed.
It's in the eyes for me. So when I look into Zhenya Obratsova's eyes, or Dasha's eyes, or anyone, it's sort of this communication of what's happening. And I always feel like when you're dancing with this person, if you really connect sort of with eye contact, you can know each other's movements. You can read each other well. When you're not connected, and you're sort of, sometimes you're in the excitement of the performance, and so you're not really connected to what's happening around you. But when you're really connected with what's happening around you, and you're looking into your partner's eyes, you can read each other and portray any sort of conversation well.
I just read some of your interviews, and it feels that the partner is really very important for you. I guess that's the reason, because you really transform also according to the partner with whom you are.
Definitely, and also from whichever partner I'm given, because sometimes you're given partners that you don't connect with as much as others, inevitably in a career. But I always try and find something that we can communicate together. It's not in essence I can't work with this person, that we can say nothing together, or I can only work with this person. I feel like something can be said with anyone. You just have to find this. It's unique with everyone. It's unique with any sort of partner. But something can be said. You just really have to be honest about what you want to say, I think.
But I also read somewhere that you are very keen to do new things, created on you.
Yes, this is the perpetual search, I think. It's a never-ending search. I think I don't live in an era of Balanchine. Alexei Radmansky has created many works on me, which I'm very grateful for, and we have this great conversation together, I think, in the studio. I've learned to trust him, and I hope he's learned to trust me as well. But he's not there all the time, unfortunately. So this sort of search to be created on and looking for challenging new work is perpetual, I think, for someone curious and hungry, I think.
As far as I know, you are somebody who are very interested in art, contemporary art as well. You're here and there, you're trying to see things and exhibitions, and very much in this. How ballet is not such a long-living art. What do you think is the future of ballet? How it will remain in our life? Because life changes a lot as well.
I think ballet is historical, first of all. I think the Bolshoi Theater wouldn't exist if it didn't have this sort of amazing repertoire that can be performed all year round and still have audiences that love it. There are certain works in the ballet repertoire, in the opera repertoire, that will last forever, really. I think the challenge of the ballet world is to not remain sort of elitist and insular. Insular in a sense that I've noticed in other sort of creative fields, like the art world or the fashion world. They are very open to embrace the new and very hungry for the new types of technology, new types of pattern making, new types of design, anything really, new types of medium for artists, contemporary artists. And in the ballet world, there's this idiom that is instilled in us when we're kids, that it's this way and only this way. And that can be very fruitful for a ballet career, but it can also be it can shut out the rest of the world and our communication to the rest of the world. And I think it's very important to stay open to what's happening in the modern era and be very open to change. Not not to compromise what we work on, and not to compromise the classics or the history of anything, history of Bolshoi theater, the history of American ballet theater, but to be open to new experiences and new ways of communicating this to audiences, because audiences are always changing.
And I also read that you created some special, what's in English, scholarship, right, for the young people.
Yes,
How this idea came?
Well, it came from me. I realized, when I was young, I looked at the dancers that I looked up to, and I said, wow, if I would have had an experience like a mentorship, just having a real conversation with this person that I looked up to, it would be an amazing experience. And so I decided to create this scholarship, which is awarded to a young boy who is aspiring, like I was when I was 15, 16. And I just sort of take them to rehearsals and to performances, and we go out for coffee and discuss, his sort of insecurities he might have, or questions he might have about technique, or anything really, just to lend a helping hand.
So it's more than just a scholarship. You're really sort of looking after, you're helping.
The scholarship is sort of secondary to me. The mentorship is what's more important to me.
I know yet it's in a far future, but do you think that in a far future you might get pleasure of really sharing your experience with some younger people then, to become like a coach?
I feel like I have a responsibility. I feel like any sort of artist that has a passion for their field has a responsibility to pass this on. I don't feel a sort of responsibility to pass on the technique of ballet, because I feel like other people will do this more passionately. But I do feel a responsibility to move this art form further along, and to really gain more attention to the art form from the outside world, and to cultivate new repertoire and new choreography, and to there are some people doing this very successfully now, and I would love to follow in their footsteps.
Well, what can I say? We are so happy that you are with us.
It's such a pleasure.
That you're sharing all that also with our company and with Russian spectators on stage. And I hope we'll talk to you next year in Russian language, right? In this green room.
I hope so too, my gosh.
Thank you.
Спасибо.
David Hallberg was in the green room tonight with us.
Thank you.
А у нас в гостях был Дэвид Холберг, премьер Большого театра, американец, впервые за многие годы ставший солистом труппы Большого театра.
Спасибо.